And my great uncle, Johnny D'Alessandro, had died at the Battle of the Bulge. My grandfather was mayor of Baltimore and had brought the Orioles to Baltimore. When they offered to name the stadium after my grandfather, he said, no, I want to name it for my brother and the veterans. And so if you go to the old Memorial Stadium, you know it was named for the veterans. 4 of my uncles were in the Army. And it never occurred to me until 2004 that I would somehow have to defend my family's service to our country. I just assumed that, like a lot of you, if not every one of you in the room, up until about 8 years ago, you did your service, you served your country, and you took pride in the fact that you had done so. And you need to brag about it. Or going to Catholic school, as they said, rend your hearts, not your clothes. But all of a sudden, in 2004, people started rending their clothes. And we said, wait a second. Whatever happened to the calm reticence of the proud warrior? Max Cleland found out. And so in 2004, about 5 days after the election, I decided to do what Democratic National Committee members do when we get pissed off. I wrote a resolution. And I wrote to Don Fowler and I said, we have got to create a Veterans Outreach Desk at the DNC because we didn't have one. We had veterans for Clinton and we had veterans for Gore and we had veterans for Kerry, and if Kerry won, we'd have a veteran in the White House. But we didn't have a veteran in the White House. And we didn't have an official home for veterans in the Democratic Party. So I sent it over to Don Fowler, and he said, well, geez, I better not tell anybody in South Carolina. I'm looking for someone in San Francisco on this idea. You go build some support first and go see Max Cleland. So I went to go see Max Cleland, and he said, you have to do veterans and military families. So you military families need to know you are included, we all are included, because Max Cleland said, no, it really has to be the full package. You've got to address everybody. And so we did. And with John Kerry's support, Chris Clark's support, Don Fowler's support, we got it done. One of the few things Democrats did unanimously in that contentious race for chair was actually all agree on the fact that we were going to establish a council. And we did. And we kept fighting. And we said then, we're going to go make a play for those Bush voters. We are not going to let them take our patriotism for granted. And even though it may not be in our nature, we will proselytize. We will tell people. We will rend some of our clothes if necessary, but we will not give up our dignity, and we will fight. And so, you heard a lot of the issues, so I'm not going to repeat everything. I'm going to walk through the 7 steps of what you need to do for the next 64 days to get this done. And I should say that, in case you didn't catch the last name connection, I'm so proud that a lot of the VSOs were brought together for some work that was done by a fellow named Vern Strider, who some of you know, who had as his job, one of his jobs, was doing outreach for the House Democratic leader and House Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, who happens to be my mom. So, one of the reporters called me and saying, in 2005, and saying, what's a Pelosi from San Francisco doing talking about veterans and military families? I said, well, my family served, why wouldn't I? And in 2006, my mom got the American Legion's Unsung Hero Award. Again, probably raising a few eyebrows along the way. So we want you to help us raise a few eyebrows. I can tell you from the trenches, the political trenches that is, you will not convince people that Republicans will cut veterans' benefits. You can't. You can show them their budgets. You can point out that Mitt Romney didn't say the word veteran at his convention. You can point out that he talked about war, but not a warrior. But they're not going to believe you. They're just not. However, you can point out what Democrats have done and what Barack Obama has done, and that will survive any fact check. So my advice to you is go after the persuadables in these 64 days. People are going to start voting in a month. Military ballots are being shipped out as we speak. So let's get focused on what we can do for Democrats up and down the ticket and great candidates like Tammy Duckworth. So, go. 7 steps. Identify your call to service, define your message, know your community, build leadership teams, raise the money, connect with people, and mobilize to win. Here we go. Our call to service, it's in our preamble. That's our national call to service for each and every one of you. It was also the call for military service for yourself or a family member. Take hold of that. Why are you a Democrat? Why are you a veteran? Why do you identify yourself as a military family member in your community? What makes you want to serve? If you're a Blue Star mom, or heaven forbid, a Gold Star mom or a Gold Star dad, what was it about your child's decision to enlist that resonated most with your family? That's your core, and that's what you gotta do. Thanks, Don. Second, our shared vision inspires our call to service. We know that equality of opportunity is important. 8-year-olds on 9/11 are voting this time for the first time. 8-year-olds on 9/11 are voting for the first time. So, 3rd graders that go into the voting booth this time are for the first time going to be voting for president with Osama bin Laden dead. And that's thanks to our president and our military. And that's important, but it also means they've grown up with the security industrial complex. So their vision of a call to service is different than other generations. And we have to know that we have to leave no veteran behind in the community or at the ballot box. Mr. DC statehood. Number 2, Democrats and President Obama keep us safe and keep us free. And we have to know how that has happened. We know the accomplishments. We know our president has a bipartisan team. We know our president has succeeded. And we know that with the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and we have a generation of veterans that we can now go after. We also can organize now on campuses. All those campuses that didn't have ROTC because of Don't Ask, Don't Tell are now reopening their doors. That's another way to do student outreach. So don't forget that as we go forward and what that means for a future generation of people growing up to appreciate the military. When we talk about leaving no veteran behind, we went through the list. You got the list, the increases in funding. Thanks to Speaker Pelosi, Leader Pelosi, Leader Harry Reid, and of course President Obama, and all the Democrats in the Senate and the House that took the tough votes in order to make sure that that happened. We talked about joining forces, we talked about the tax credits, and we're going to have to talk about the ongoing challenges. You heard some of them. Some friends of mine made a movie, it's called The Invisible War, and it's about the invisible war that female rape victims, rape survivors face and fight. So if anyone asks you, well, is that even real? Tell them, go see The Invisible War and you'll understand how brave these women are. When they were filming the movies, they said the only women who could show their faces are the women out of the service. No women in the service who had been raped was willing to show their faces or identities for fear of retaliation. 19,000 women assaulted a year in our military. So we need to own that, be responsible for that, and reduce that, and tackle those suicides, because this is devastating families. Number 3, in the community, you need to teach people where we are in the community. Where are the veterans? Because they don't know. They may not have visited the bases. The local campaigns in your communities, Rob is making sure that they know, and Ron is making sure that they know, but you've got some green candidates out there that don't know, and you need to take them around and introduce them. Bring them to a house meeting hosted by a vet so they can understand the terminology and they can understand the cares and concerns and what they've got to do. And you've got to make sure that there's a gut check here. Do I trust this person on veterans issues? You've got to be the ambassadors for people who are not in the service over these next 64 days. 4, some fun. Look at your age groups. You've got old people and young people. You've got beehives from the 20th century, and you've got social networking beehives online. You had the old blackberry was a fruit. My grandmother used to can fruit. Now my blackberry is my electronic leash, right? So in a campaign, you've got to get the iPads and the legal pads working together to make sure that all of the service areas are covered. Building those leadership teams. You make sure you've got a veteran on every team. The veterans in the kitchen cabinet ought to be speaking up now about the swift voting and about the comparisons. They can go out and make that fight. The veterans on the finance council need to be helping people dig deep. The veterans need to open their homes and be house meeting hosts. The veterans need to lead the volunteer corps, peer-to-peer work that Bill Dooley can tell you about, and the veterans have to be on that election protection team to get you through those hot spots with the overseas ballots, the military voting. Remember, 4 years ago, we couldn't even get into the VA hospitals under President Bush. Another reform under President Obama. So you got to know where those votes are, and you got to be able to pull them out. And veterans and military families need to be on that election protection team for every single campaign. 5, connecting with people. Remember, you need to reach people where they are, not where you are or where you want them to be. And in my home state of California, in a lot of places around the country, you've got Latino communities. Guess what? They just did a poll, Univision Commission, bipartisan bilingual poll. You know what they found? 25% of Latino families receive their primary political information in Spanish. So if you don't have Spanish advertising, you are missing out. If you're not working with the USGI Forum, a Latino VSO, you're missing votes. You're just leaving them on the table. So we have to make sure that you are doing everything you can in all of the venues and in all of the languages that are culturally necessary and appropriate to win, and keeping that open feedback loop. Make sure when you phone bank, if something comes up, you're able to tell the phone bank supervisor, this is what they're saying out there, so that you can turn it around and try to make a difference. And you have to, on the receiving end of it, are going to take it back to Chicago so we know how to rework things and clarify and support our people. You can't be the eyes and ears if we're not listening and giving you something better to take back to people where there's confusion. So that feedback loop goes constantly around. Raising the money. Remember those ads, Send a Marine to Congress, that Max Cleland sent out over and over and over again for a lot of the fighting Dems, starting with Paul Hackett of Ohio. That really matters right now. As Congresswoman, Chairwoman Wasserman Schultz said, for some it's money, for most it's time, but when you're asking for money, make sure that it's a peer-to-peer ask at this point. And remember to barter. Everybody here has something they can give other than money. Offer that, and if you're working on a campaign, accept that. And of course, when we talk about mobilizing to win, the last and most important point. When we talk about mobilizing to win, we have some inspiration from those veterans who have run for office, who start with their band of brothers and sisters. We have veterans who will say, I'm an ambassador for this person. We have the fantastic Tim Walz, who ran and was opposed by someone who had never served. Tim Walz, who knew what it was like as a coach and as a vet to have dressed kids for football and dressed them for war. He knew, and he explained it so clearly. And he had his validators, his former students and colleagues, go out there and be the tip of the spear for him. So now is the time to galvanize those networks. Not only can we leave no veteran behind in policy, you can't leave any veteran behind at the ballot box. If you know veterans, if you've got a list, you know, I know some people will say, well, that's all well and good, Christine, but I can't go to the VFW hall in my neighborhood. You know what? You're going to have to take a friend, but you're going to have to go. You have to go. Every single community, no matter how skeptical they might be at first. But you have to get out there and make sure people hear your message. So when you think about the steps that it's going to take it takes that personal commitment from each and every one of you to say, for the next 64 days, I will take my expertise and I'm going to place it squarely on being an ambassador for the Democratic Party and the Democratic Party's commitment to patriotism, to veterans, and to military families. That is our job, with some terrific help. And I want to say before I close, thank you to our sign language interpreter, who's done a great job today. If I had my voice, you'd have carpal tunnel by now. And I can't be much of a voice today, but we're all going to be a voice for veterans and a voice for the Democratic Party on Election Day. Are you ready to win?
Yeah.